I saved my daughter's life from a cruel man she was about to marry, and this journey was not easy. Before I start my story, please like my video and do subscribe, and also tell me where are you from in comment section. My name is Eleanor Vance and I'm a grandmother, not the fragile cookie baking kind you see in movies, though I do bake a mean peach cobbler. I'm the kind who knows how to handle a shotgun, fix a leaky faucet, and spot trouble a mile away, especially when that trouble is sniffing around my only child, my sweet, smart, 32-year-old daughter, Caroline. Caroline was getting married in 3 months to a man named Russell Thorne. On paper, Russell was perfect. A sharp, successful financial analyst from Chicago. He drove a black German car, wore suits that cost more than my monthly Social Security check, and had a smile that could charm the bees right out of the lavender bushes. He proposed to Caroline on a gondola in Venice, all very dramatic and Instagram-worthy. Caroline was ecstatic, radiant in a way I hadn't seen since she was a girl winning the regional science fair. The wedding planning had taken over her life, the dress fittings, the tasting, the endless discussions about floral arrangements. But Eleanor Vance didn't live life on paper. I lived life by gut feeling, and my gut was screaming. It started subtly. Russell was always too polished, too controlled. I remember the first time I noticed something truly wrong. We were at the bridal shop, a ridiculously fancy place in Cleveland. Caroline had been on a high, twirling in a dress that looked like spun moonlight. Then she tripped slightly on the long train, bumping into a rack of veils. Nothing broke, nothing was damaged, but the noise was sharp. Russell, who had been on his phone across the room, looked up. The charming smile vanished. His face went flat, cold, and his eyes, usually a pleasant blue, went dark like the instant before a storm hits. "Caroline," he said, his voice low, measured, and terrifyingly devoid of warmth. "Be careful, that's an expensive mistake waiting to happen." It wasn't what he said, it was the chilling precision of his delivery. Caroline flinched. A tiny, almost imperceptible twitch of her shoulders, like she was anticipating a blow. She stammered out an apology for tripping, and her whole buoyant mood deflated like a cheap balloon. "Just clumsy old me, right, honey?" She tried to laugh it off, but the sound was thin. I watched him. He held that hard look for a beat too long before forcing the smile back on, a switch flicking on the charm. "It's fine, sweetheart, just a little stress. Don't worry about it." He kissed her forehead, and everyone in the shop went back to cooing over the dress. But I didn't. I saw the look of relief on Caroline's face when he turned away, the way she instinctively rubbed her arm. It was a reflex, an action I'd seen on women who are accustomed to managing a man's temper. From that day forward, I started watching, not just Russell, but Caroline. I noticed the change in her phone habits. She used to answer my calls immediately. Now she always let it ring once or twice, and often she'd whisper, "Not now, Mom, Russell's right here." I noticed the gradual retreat from her friends, the excuses for missing our weekly Sunday dinner. "Russell wants us to try this new place, or he thinks I need to focus on work." The biggest sign, the one that made my blood run cold and finally galvanized me, was the bruise. She came over one rainy Tuesday, supposedly to drop off some wedding invitations. She was wearing a thick sweater despite it being late May. When she reached for a cookie, the sleeve rode up just a little too high. There, just above her wrist, was a yellowish-green mark, fading but unmistakable. "Caroline," I said, keeping my voice steady, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "What is that?" She snatched her hand back as if I'd touched a live wire. "Oh, that nothing, Mom, I bumped into the corner of a table at work. You know how clumsy I am." But the look in her eyes wasn't clumsy, it was panic. It was a practiced, desperate lie, and in that moment, sitting in my sunny kitchen, I knew. Russell Thorne wasn't just too controlled or too stern, he was a menace, and my daughter was walking straight into a cage. The wedding was off one way or another. I just had to prove what I knew, and I had to do it before she stood at the altar. The lie hung heavy in the kitchen air, thick and metallic like the scent of old blood. Caroline, seeing the stubborn, calculating look settle on my face, the look she knew meant business, started to fidget with the edge of her sweater. "Mom, seriously, it's nothing," she insisted, pushing the cookie plate away. "Look, I really can't stay. Russell's expecting me back by 5. We have a fitting with the caterer." "He gives you a curfew now, honey?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. I didn't press the bruise. "Not yet." I knew if I pushed too hard, she'd retreat completely, erecting a wall of denial that even I couldn't climb. Abusers thrive on isolating their victims, and the first step to breaking that isolation is being the calm, unwavering presence that doesn't judge the victim, only the perpetrator. "It's not a curfew, Mom," she sighed, exasperated, gathering her purse. "It's just, we have a lot to do, and Russell is very organized, you know that." "Yes, I know that," I replied, standing up and walking her to the door. I gave her a hug, squeezing her tight, hoping to convey the depth of my love and fear without words. "Just be careful, my girl, please." As I watched her sedan disappear down the gravel drive, I didn't go back to the porch swing. I went straight to my home office, a small cluttered room I used for paying bills and keeping track of my late husband's business accounts. This wasn't about bills or ledgers, this was about research. Russell Thorne had arrived in Caroline's life 6 months ago, seemingly out of nowhere, introduced through a mutual friend at a corporate event. I had done the cursory mother investigation, a quick social media check, a peek at his company website. Everything was clean, impressive, boringly successful. Now I needed to go deeper into the murky waters of things people tried to hide. My first thought was a private investigator, but that felt too official, too expensive, and too easy for Russell's sharp mind to sniff out. No, Eleanor Vance had been navigating the small-town politics of Ohio for 70 years. I knew how to find out secrets. And in the digital age, everyone leaves a trail, no matter how faint. I pulled out my old laptop and started with the simplest thing, his full name and a specific search term. Not Russell Thorne good man, or Russell Thorne great fiancé, but Russell Thorne and complaint, incident, restraining order. The usual search results were articles about his firm's success and his charity work, the public facade. I shifted tactics. A man who controls his fiancé likely controlled his previous partners too. I started looking for his dating history. LinkedIn was a goldmine for his professional life, but Facebook was where people made mistakes. I found his profile heavily locked down, but friends lists are harder to hide. I focused on women tagged in old photos, college friends, high school acquaintances, and particularly women who were listed as having been in a relationship with him. There were two significant ones. An ex-girlfriend named Sarah Jenkins who had completely scrubbed Russell from her life, deleting all photos and mentions, and a woman named Melissa Reyes who still had one old photo with him from about 4 years ago where they looked happy. I decided to start with Melissa. She lived in Boston, according to her profile. I took the risk. I sent her a polite, seemingly harmless message, carefully crafted to avoid setting off any alarms, yet specific enough to pique her curiosity if she had a story to tell. Dear Melissa, my name is Eleanor Vance. I am the mother of Caroline Vance, who is currently engaged to Russell Thorne. I am reaching out to you because I noticed you used to date Russell, and as a mother, I am doing my due diligence. I would be immensely grateful for just 5 minutes of your time for an entirely confidential general discussion about Russell. No need to reply unless you feel comfortable. Sincerely, Eleanor Vance. It was a shot in the dark. I didn't know if she would even see the message, let alone respond. I sat back, the faint click of the keyboard still echoing in the silence of the office, and waited. The next few hours were torture, filled with me rereading the message, wondering if I had scared her off or if I had been too blunt. Then, just as the evening news came on, a dull report about local politics, my laptop chimed. A notification from Facebook Messenger. Melissa Reyes had replied. The message was short, cryptic, and sent a jolt of icy validation through me. Eleanor, you need to call me. Use a different number than your cell. Do it tonight. I have to talk to you about Caroline. The urgency in her text was terrifying. She wasn't offering a pleasant chat about an ex. She was issuing a warning. I immediately knew why she said use a different number. Russell, the control expert, was likely monitoring my daughter's and possibly even my own communications. I grabbed my old prepaid flip phone, the one I kept in a drawer for emergencies, and walked out onto the dark porch. It was time for the real digging to begin. I had found the first thread I needed to pull. I proceeded to the old oak swing, settling into the familiar creak with the prepaid phone clutched in my hand. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of cut grass and impending rain. I didn't save Melissa's number. I dialed it once, my fingers shaking slightly, and then deleted the call record immediately. She picked up on the second ring, her voice tight and barely a whisper. Hello, is this Eleanor? Yes, Melissa, thank you for calling me back. I'm on a burner phone, I confirmed, using the terminology I'd learned from years of watching crime dramas. A weary sigh came through the line. Good, that man, he monitors everything. I scrubbed him out of my life 4 years ago, and I still get nervous answering a call about him. Tell me everything, Melissa, I urged, the formal pleasantries dissolving immediately. What do I need to know about Russell? Melissa didn't hesitate. The story poured out of her, a stream of suppressed fear and shame. It started as these things always do, slowly. He's a master manipulator, Eleanor. He targets smart, successful women who think they're too strong to be controlled. He's charming, generous, until he gets you isolated. The first time he raised his voice, I thought it was just stress. The first time he threw a glass not at me but near me against the wall, I apologized, thinking I had pushed him too far. I felt the familiar, sick twist in my stomach, remembering Caroline's flinch at the bridal shop. Did he ever lay a hand on you? I asked, the question catching in my throat. There was a pause, a long, agonizing silence. Yes, Melissa finally whispered, the word thick with tears. Not often, and never where anyone would see. He specialized in marks that looked like accidents. A hard shove into a doorway, a tight grip on an arm that left a bruise that looked like a bump. He didn't hit with a closed fist, Eleanor. He used his open hand, a slap. He called it discipline. It was always followed by hours of groveling gifts and I love you so intense you started to believe the abuse was your fault for stressing him out. I closed my eyes, picturing the faint, fading mark on Caroline's wrist. It wasn't a bump from a table, it was Russell. The confirmation was devastating, yet it brought a cold clarity of purpose. When was the last time, Melissa? 4 years ago, I broke a plate during an argument and he slapped me across the face, not a hard one but hard enough. I left that night. I had to get a restraining order, but he fought it. He had the money and the connections. I settled for a non-disclosure agreement and a move across the country just to get him out of my life. He's a menace, Eleanor. He ruins you professionally and personally. He threatened my job, my reputation. He knows how to hit you where it hurts without leaving a literal scar. I thanked Melissa profusely, promising to be in touch and to keep her name completely confidential. After the call, I sat there for a long time, the only sound the chirping of the crickets. The story wasn't just a pattern, it was a script. Caroline was following Melissa's path step for step. I knew I couldn't just tell Caroline. She was deep in the cycle of abuse and denial. My accusations without tangible proof would just push her back into Russell's arms. I needed to catch him in the act, or even better, find concrete, irrefutable evidence of his past crimes that would stand up in an American court. The NDA with Melissa meant she couldn't testify, but her story gave me the target: his temper, his financial manipulation, and his pattern of violence. My next step had to focus on the digital trail, but I needed a physical presence. I decided to use the one thing Russell couldn't monitor: his own future home. Caroline and Russell were closing on a house the following week, a beautiful but largely empty colonial in a neighboring town. They were spending more and more time there, supposedly measuring for furniture. This was my chance. I had to get into that house and plant my own evidence collector. Something that could record his verbal abuse, the bad talk that Melissa had mentioned, the constant psychological degradation that came before the physical acts. I drove to the new house the next morning. It was locked up, but the landscaping crew had just finished their work, and I knew the lead landscaper, a nice young man named Tommy from my church. I drove past, slowing down just enough to confirm the house was empty, and then made a U-turn and drove straight to Tommy's office. I didn't lie. I told Tommy a carefully curated version of the truth. "Tommy, my daughter is marrying a man who is making me very uncomfortable. He's already shown signs of a terrible temper, and I believe he has a history of domestic violence. I need to get inside that house for 5 minutes just to hide a small recording device to protect my daughter. I'm not asking you to steal or break anything, just to forget to latch the side garage door when you leave today." Tommy, a family man himself, looked conflicted. He hesitated for a long minute, looking at my steady, desperate gaze. He finally nodded, his face grim. "Mrs. Vance, I can't tell you I didn't latch that door, but if you were to check it late tonight after midnight and found it unsecured, well, that's between you and God." That night, under the cover of a moonless sky, I pulled on a pair of dark clothes, tucked my old, quiet shoes into a bag, and drove my pickup truck to within 2 blocks of the empty colonial. I walked the rest of the way. The air was silent, the kind of silence that amplifies every heartbeat. I found the side garage door, "Thank you, Tommy," and gave a small, reverent tug. It eased open. The door was unsecured. My target was the living room, specifically a large, ornate grandfather clock that Russell insisted on moving in early. It was heavy, sound dampening, and central to the room. I worked fast, my old hands steady. I had purchased a tiny, high-quality audio recorder about the size of my thumb, designed for long battery life and voice activation. I used duct tape to secure it deep inside the cavity of the clock's wooden works. It was hidden, charged, and ready to listen. I slipped out of the house and back into the dark night, the adrenaline finally starting to course through me. The clock was ticking, literally and figuratively. Now I just had to wait for Russell to show his true colors and for the recorder to capture the evidence that would set my daughter free. The waiting period was a study in controlled tension, a taut wire stretched across my days. I went back to my routine: gardening, baking, attending church, but every casual encounter with Caroline was a minefield. I had to maintain the facade of the slightly skeptical but ultimately accepting mother of the bride. Russell, sensing perhaps an underlying coolness, started making a deliberate effort with me. He would arrive at my farm with expensive wine or a bouquet of flowers for the table, offering clipped, polite conversations about interest rates and the rising cost of lumber. He was performing, and I was performing right back, watching him through the narrowed focus of a hawk tracking prey. One afternoon, he came over alone. Caroline was delayed at work. He walked right past the porch swing and found me pulling weeds in the vegetable patch. "Mrs. Vance," he began, his voice smooth as silk, "I wanted to talk to you about the wedding guest list. Caroline seems a little overwhelmed, and frankly, I think she's stressing herself out." I straightened up slowly, wiping my gloved hand on my jeans. "Caroline is not easily overwhelmed, Russell. She's been managing a team of 20 in a high-pressure job for 5 years. He smiled, a tight, patronizing gesture that didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, but this is different. This is emotional. She's my future wife, and I need her to be calm and focused. Just the other day, she got quite upset because I suggested we cut a few of her old college friends. Frankly, they bring too much drama." The hair stood up on the back of my neck. This was it, the slow, subtle isolation Melissa had described. He wasn't just planning a wedding, he was pruning Caroline's support network. "Those friends are important to Caroline, Russell," I said evenly. "They've been there for her since she was 19. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes flashed with that cold, flat look I'd seen in the bridal shop. It was so fast, it was easy to miss. "With respect, Mrs. Vance, I'm building a new life with Caroline, and I intend for that life to be one of order and tranquility. I think her getting quite upset over something so minor shows she needs firm guidance." "Firm guidance or control, Russell?" I asked, looking him directly in the eye, challenging him for the first time. He didn't flinch. He simply tucked his hands into his pockets, regaining his composure instantly. "Guidance, Eleanor. As her husband, it will be my responsibility to keep her focused on what truly matters. I wouldn't want you to worry about it." He was issuing a veiled warning: "Stay out of my way." The encounter only solidified my urgency. The recording had to be retrieved soon. The opportunity came 3 weeks later under the guise of an errand. Caroline called, sounding distracted. "Mom, can you do me a favor? Russell's bringing his important client, Mr. Davison, by the new house tomorrow morning to show him the library conversion. We left a portfolio of blueprints there, the ones in the grandfather clock storage compartment, remember? Russell can't spare the time to drive back tonight. Can you swing by and grab them? We close on the house next week, so the key is still under the old bird bath." My heart pounded a triumphant rhythm against my ribs. It was the perfect, legitimate excuse to be near the clock, and the house was empty tonight. I waited until 11 p.m. I drove to the colonial house, retrieved the key, and let myself in. The house was cold and cavernous in the dark. I bypassed the light switches, using the small beam of a powerful penlight. The grandfather clock stood like a silent sentinel in the living room. My hands, though old, were practiced and steady. I knelt, opened the side panel I had tampered with earlier, and reached deep inside the wooden works. My fingers found the tiny recorder exactly where I had taped it. I peeled it off and slipped it into my pocket. Total time inside, less than 2 minutes. I relocked the house, replaced the key, and was back in my truck before anyone in the quiet suburban street could notice. I didn't stop to examine the device until I was safely back in my own quiet, darkened farmhouse office. I connected the thumb-sized recorder to my computer. The file list was long hours and hours of silence, then short bursts of audio indicating the voice activation had worked. I scrolled through the dates, finding recent entries. I clicked on the first recording from 2 nights ago. It started with a normal conversation between Caroline and Russell about finances. Then a shift. Caroline nervously admitted she'd overspent the wedding budget by a few $100s on a small item. The voice that answered was not the charming, public Russell Thorne. It was a serpent hissing venom. "Russell, you did what, Caroline? How many times have I told you that you are incapable of handling money? You are reckless, you are irresponsible, and you are going to bankrupt us before the honeymoon." "Caroline, Russell, please, it was only $300 for the special linens, they were on sale." "Russell, I don't care if they were free, you do not make unilateral decisions regarding our money. Do you understand? I am the head of this household and you will defer to my judgment. Are you deliberately trying to undermine me? Are you trying to prove that you are too stupid to be my wife?" Then came the sound that made my chest seize. A sudden sharp noise like an object hitting a wall, followed by a muffled cry. "Caroline, stop it, Russell, please, you're hurting my arm." "Russell, I'm simply correcting your behavior, sweetheart. You will not embarrass me again. Now say it, say I'm sorry for being reckless, Russell, and I will not question your financial authority again." "Caroline, I'm sorry, I won't question you." "Russell, good girl, now come here, I love you, you know that. I'm just trying to make you the best version of yourself." I ripped the headphones off, bile rising in my throat. The recording was irrefutable. It wasn't just proof of the bad talk and the psychological degradation, it was proof of physical assault, the hurting my arm and the subsequent coercion. I had the evidence. Now the complex, dangerous part began. How to use this evidence to save my daughter and put a man like Russell Thorne, who had money, connections, and legal savvy, behind bars. The morning after retrieving the recording, I called Caroline and told her I needed to see her immediately. Not at the farmhouse and certainly not at the Colonial, but at a neutral location, the public library downtown. It was a space Russell would be highly unlikely to frequent, offering both privacy and witnesses if things went wrong. I told her it was about the final payment to the caterer, a lie that was just plausible enough to get her there. She arrived 15 minutes late, looking tense and frazzled. The dark circles under her eyes were more prominent than I remembered. "Mom, what's going on? Russell's going to kill me if I'm late getting back to the office," she said, collapsing into a hard wooden chair in a quiet, unused study nook. I didn't waste time on small talk. I placed the small audio recorder on the table between us. I kept my face calm, but my voice was firm and low. "This is what's going on, Caroline. I need you to listen to something, and I need you to listen with an open mind and an open heart. I know you're afraid, but I am here and I am safe. I will not let him hurt you again." She frowned, bewildered by the recorder. "What is that, Mom? What are you talking about?" I ignored the questions. I plugged my small headphones into the recorder and pressed play on the clip I had isolated. The short, devastating moment from 2 nights ago. Russell's chilling indictment of her intelligence, the sounds of her crying, the muffled cry, "Stop it, Russell, you're hurting my arm," and his triumphant, controlling demand for an apology. I kept the volume low, ensuring only she could hear it. I watched her face as she listened. It was a terrifying transformation. First confusion, then instant recognition, her eyes widening in horror as she heard her own voice. Then came the denial, a frantic shake of the head, and finally devastating shame and realization. She snatched the headphones off, her chest heaving. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't make a sound. She was mortified, exposed, and utterly broken. "Mom, I didn't think anyone could hear that," she whispered, her voice raw. "I know, honey." "He made sure of that," I said, reaching across the table and taking her hand firmly. "The bruises from the table corner, the apologies you make when he's just stressed, the isolation from your friends, it all stops now. This is a pattern, Caroline, it's what he does. I spoke to an ex-girlfriend of his. This is his script, and this recording is the proof we need to get you out and lock him up." I laid out my plan immediately. I knew the police would need more than an audio recording from a non-consenting party, especially against a wealthy man with good lawyers. I needed an official police report, and I needed to ensure Caroline's immediate physical safety. You are not going back to him. You are not answering his calls. You are coming back to the farm with me right now, I commanded. We are going to the county sheriff's office straight from here. We will file a report and we will apply for an immediate temporary restraining order, TRO. Caroline was hesitant, fear battling relief. He'll know, Mom, he'll find me, he'll say I fabricated it, he'll ruin my career. He can't ruin you if he's in jail, darling, and if he comes near my farm he will be violating a legal order and I will be waiting for him. You are safe with me. I drove her straight to the sheriff's office. I didn't let her waver. The moment we presented the audio recording and Caroline gave her tearful but detailed statement, the deputy assigned to us, a kind woman named Officer Harris, took the case seriously. The recording provided powerful corroboration of the assault and the coercion, giving the police grounds to move. Within hours, the TRO was filed and granted, legally barring Russell from coming near Caroline, the farmhouse, or her workplace. The domestic violence detective took the recorder as evidence. Now came the waiting game for the arrest. We stayed at the farmhouse. I unplugged the main phone line and changed the Wi-Fi password. Every time the door knocked, Caroline jumped. Russell predictably went ballistic. He started with concerned texts, then demanding calls, then aggressive emails to Caroline's work address. When he was served with the TRO late that evening, he lost all pretense of control. He called me repeatedly, the voice on my voicemail shifting from calculated menace to outright terrifying rage. Eleanor, you listen to me. You have poisoned my fiancé against me. You are interfering with my future. You are going to regret this. Get Caroline on the phone right now or I will make sure you lose everything you own. I simply forwarded the voicemail recordings along with a certified copy of the TRO to Officer Harris. This documented violation of the court order sealed his fate. He was not only facing charges for assault but also for harassment and violating the order. The final confrontation came swiftly. 2 days later, Russell attempted a brazen move. He drove to Caroline's office building downtown, attempting to intercept her in the parking garage, claiming he just needed to talk. His arrogance blinded him to the fact that the sheriff's department was now monitoring his movements. The police were already waiting. As Russell stepped out of his car, shouting Caroline's name, he was surrounded by 2 patrol cars. He fought the arrest, citing his expensive lawyer and his status, screaming about his rights. But the officers were unmoved. He was cuffed, read his Miranda rights, and taken into custody on felony charges of assault and battery in violation of a restraining order. I received the call from Officer Harris while I was making dinner. Mrs. Vance, he's in custody. He won't be able to contact Caroline. Your daughter is safe. The relief was overwhelming. The ensuing legal battle was brutal, just as Melissa had warned. Russell's legal team tried every dirty trick, claiming parental interference, alleging that Caroline was mentally unstable and being manipulated by her mother, and arguing that the audio recording was illegally obtained and inadmissible. But I had prepared. I had kept every single aggressive voicemail. I had the statement from Melissa, which, though she couldn't testify, the police used to establish a pattern of behavior and guide their investigation. Most importantly, the physical evidence of the struggle captured on the audio, coupled with Caroline's testimony and the immediate violation of the TRO, was too much to overcome. The prosecution secured a plea deal rather than risk a lengthy trial. Russell, facing the overwhelming evidence and the threat of severe prison time, pleaded guilty to the lesser charges of misdemeanor battery and harassment, but the plea included 6 months in county jail and a permanent 5-year full protection order for Caroline. It wasn't a life sentence, but it was enough. It was a criminal conviction. It was jail time, and it was a legal barrier that ensured he would never be able to touch or threaten my daughter again. Caroline stayed with me for new. The healing was slow, marked by counseling and the gradual reconnection with the friends Russell had tried to drive away. But she was free, she was safe. 1 year after the canceled wedding date, Caroline and I sat on the old porch swing. The sky was once again streaked with orange and purple. She was laughing genuinely, talking about starting a new project at work. She was wearing a simple silver necklace I had given her, a small, subtle symbol of strength, not a giant diamond meant to mark ownership. Thank you, Mom, she said, resting her head on my shoulder. If you hadn't seen it, if you hadn't fought for me, I don't know what would have happened. I simply squeezed her hand. A mother always fights, Caroline. We don't stop until our children are safe. The creak of the swing continued, a comforting rhythm of life lived and dangers overcome. The world was still full of darkness, but tonight on this porch there was only the quiet certainty of peace. I had saved my daughter, and the cost was just a little vigilance and the guts of an old Ohio grandma.